Hello, and welcome to the 6.5 Summit. I'm Shelley Kramer, one of the founding partners of Futurum Research. And on behalf of my team here at Futurum and the team at Moor Insights and Strategy, welcome. We're glad to have you here. In this keynote conversation, Moor Insights and Strategy's Patrick Moorhead speaks with Chris Wolf, the VP of the Advanced Technology Group in the Office of the CTO at VMware. And our conversation today is going to revolve around innovation strategies that are driving the development of better applications that can facilitate digital transformation. That's a mouthful. I think that you will love this conversation. So let's hear what they have to say.
Chris, welcome to the 6.5 Summit 2021. And I just want to thank you for keynoting our day 2, which is all about enterprise apps and collaboration.
No, thanks, Patrick. Really happy to be here and just happy to have a great conversation with you.
Yeah, so maybe a great place to start is there are a ton of things going on at VMware. You have a new CEO and a new president. Can you talk a little bit about, give us your perspective on these new leaders, and be honest, and what can customers expect from VMware's new leadership team?
Yeah, I'm really excited, actually. I met Raghu in 2007 for the first time and actually had met Sumit around the very same time or same year, maybe within a year or two difference. But what do I find about him? First, what I admire most about Raghu is I think he's a pragmatic innovator. It's easy to have big ideas, right? But more important is to take an idea and understand the timing for when to enter a market and understand how to really connect that to customer or industry needs. Raghu has all of those insights and pragmatic foresight, as I had mentioned, which I find to be very rare in this industry. He's humble. He has high integrity. He really aligns well to the VMware culture. And I could say the same thing about Sumit Dewan. Sumit is a fantastic executive, had always been a rising star. I had seen that very clearly when I first had worked with him when he was at Citrix, and just continue to see, again, meeting that same VMware bar for culture and what we look for in terms of integrity and humility, and just being a very capable, competent leader. So I think the leadership future for the company is very strong, and you're going to continue to see just really rich talent coming into VMware, I think, in response to this new change.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with Pat Gelsinger and Sanjay Poonen, and I can't wait to spend more time with the new crew. So I want to jump in a little bit on you're part of the office of the CTO, and you have something very unique in there is you actually have ESG inside of the office of the CTO. So environment, sustainability, and governance. Can you, first of all, tell us about the thinking of that, but also what's a key area where VMware is doing some great ESG stuff?
Wow, yeah, I think it's really areas. For us in the CTO office, it's all about innovating and how we innovate. It's really important. And also doing work with a purpose, making sure that we're not just, having our own little sandboxes and doing things, but making sure any work we're doing is truly aligned to industry or customer needs. When you look at the ESG team and the office of the CTO, they've really been pushing the bar, I think, in terms of really how far you can go for software companies. VMware software since I think 2003, we've reduced about 1.3 billion metric tons of carbon globally. In addition to that, we're an RE100 company already. We've already met our goals in terms of being 100% renewable energy powered across our global operations. We've also done other areas of innovation that I think are pretty important. For example, through the CTO organization, we started a program called Nonprofit Connect, where we're connecting nonprofits to the technical and engineering talent needed to really help them to be successful. So this is a service that we provide. In addition to that, and I can get into some details if you're interested, we've gone as far as we now have a sustainability engineering team. So we are attracting engineering talent, knowing they're coming to VMware, and they are just working on engineering and really new software elements or designs that are going to have a direct impact on sustainability going forward. These are areas such as edge computing, machine learning, and lots of other areas that I think are really important to the industry. So there's a lot happening there, and this is really just a very tiny slice, I'd say, of what's happening with ESG in the CTO office at VMware.
Yeah, I thought it was unique. I thought it's interesting, and I have reviewed a lot of companies' ESG plans. It's the first one that's out of the office of the CTO. So I might posit that some of the greatest minds inside of VMware are working on that, and I think that's really cool. So let's just dive right into applications here and the cloud. So VMware has really, I mean, you guys went all cloud. I don't know if it was 6 or 7 years ago, but everything you're doing is in the spirit of the cloud, and digital transformation. As we've all talked about it, as we've seen and experienced, has really sped up during the pandemic, and now we have this massive growth in modern apps that run in the cloud. And so, for enterprises and organizations who are going all in on the public cloud, where does VMware provide value to that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Patrick, and it's a question I get quite often, actually, from different end user organizations. Like, why am I talking to you? Aren't you a data center company? It's like, no, yeah, we were 15 years ago, but we've really evolved much further beyond that. So when you think about what COVID has taught us, right, and what this global pandemic has meant, a few things. So first, the fact that there's a complete difference now in the preference that employees have for how and where they work, where it's the majority of employees worldwide want to have that work from home option, but they want to make sure that the business itself is really providing the security and the capabilities to make them productive at home. It's becoming an expectation. So if you think about just the anywhere workplace that VMware has been driving for more than the past decade, we're really well aligned to that today. If you go further and you start thinking about, well, cloud and cloud applications, what does that mean? There's lots of areas where we're also complementing, like from the dawn of IT, right? If somebody has a problem with their computer, you can just blame DNS, and they're gonna be like, oh yeah, I can't access the application. Yeah, it probably is that, right? And it's gonna buy you time to troubleshoot.
Yeah.
And while we can joke about that, at the end of the day, it's the network that can make or break how well your applications can perform. So, what are we doing? Through software defined WAN and SASE, we're bringing networking and security to anywhere an application can run, whether that's at a SaaS provider, a native public cloud service, whether that's at an edge site or what have you. So, that's an area. If you think about our Tanzu portfolio, what we're doing through Kubernetes and Cloud Foundry and other projects is Spring Boot, et cetera, is to give organizations a way where they can build applications and keep them in a way where they're maintaining flexibility and control of the IP that they're creating as a business. And that's really important because something else COVID has taught us is we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. But odds are, right, the apps you build today with one intention, you're going to have to run them somewhere else in the future. And through VMware and our ISV partner community, we're providing a way that you can build and run applications and operate them consistently in a way that's truly cloud agnostic. It's not to say that this is going to be for all your applications, but there's a lot of areas where you want that flexibility and control. You want to be able to future proof your investments in applications. And these are areas that we focus on that we think is important. And it's very complementary to what you're seeing in native public cloud services today.
Yeah, one area that I know VMware doesn't get enough credit for is its security portfolio on the edge. And I know you have security that spans cloud to edge and everything in between. But the notion of all these workers going outside and having to get their work done, there was a lot of many VMware solutions out there loaded on those devices. So let's go from the abstract to kind of definitive in what VMware is doing at the company, and the changes that you've experienced there with your company culture, and maybe talk about the new work model at VMware looking ahead. We talk about hybrid, but that can mean 100 different things.
Yeah. Yeah. For us, it's been pretty interesting. That my organization in particular, we have engineering offices in 5 different countries. We've been global in nature. We've had a mantra in terms of looking to hire the best talent for a particular role, regardless of where they live. So an example of that is we don't have a dedicated engineering office in Mexico City, but the best candidate we had for a data science position happens to live in Mexico City. So we're like, okay, great, let's make it work. So there had been some of that going in, I'd say, with the company and continuing to expand into company culture that had helped. And where we've gotten to now is we try to make it really simple. So you can be a fixed employee, you can have a flexible schedule, which means maybe you're going to the office a couple days a week, or you're full remote. And in many cases, the employee and the employee's manager can make the decision in terms of what's best for them and their lifestyle, and we can simply flex around that. And that's been really successful, especially as some of the offices are starting to open back up. And I can tell you, even with our engineering offices in many different countries, the challenge that we had when we went to this full remote workforce wasn't getting access to applications or being able to continue to code. It was things like, well, all they had was a laptop, so we had to get monitors shipped, and there was logistical and customs challenges. Those were far more difficult than simply gaining access to the applications.
Interesting. I love that. So over the past 12 months, VMware has gotten big into two areas: application development and like I said, security. And I'm curious, I may know the answer, but I want to hear it in VMware's words here. What has driven the developments, and how does that security and app dev portfolio reflect what customers are really looking at it, and how's it different?
Yeah, that's a great question, Patrick. And it really is key today to be differentiated if you're going to add value, right? Especially when you look at the public cloud space, and organizations can get a lot of services natively from the public cloud providers. So you have to be, in some ways, you have to have a broad purview, but at the same time, you need to be surgical and decide what are the real problems that need to be solved and in a way that is cloud agnostic and important for our customers, right? So when you start to look at the application space as an example, one thing folks need is observability and being able to understand the behavior of all aspects of the application. And that application, parts of it could still run into VM natively on VMware and EC2. It could be leveraging Lambda functions, could leverage some backend native services. So being able to have that end-to-end purview and aggregate is really important, right? To understand, well, if something's going wrong or if I'm not meeting an application SLA, what do I do there? I mentioned through our Tanzu portfolio, we're providing a flexible application platform that can run in any cloud today, and can run on premises or at the edge site or whatever might happen in the future. So our contributions upstream to the Kubernetes community are really important in that regard. Another area in the Cloud Native Computing Foundation is Project Harbor. So the most prolific open source container registry today is Harbor, and it was founded at VMware. And it was actually founded by a team of engineers based in China that were part of the VMware office of the CTO.
Interesting.
So it's really, these contributions are important for us. But so if we back up, what is it? It's the management observability of the application. It's understanding cost and being able to optimize cost for the applications itself. So that gets into what we're doing to a degree in the app space. But then if you pivot towards security, wow, right? Where do we begin?
Right.
Being able to secure the software supply chain is super important to every enterprise today. We continue to see this increase in ransomware attacks that organizations are being faced with. And the VMware philosophy here is to say, you know what? We want the application or the application container to be secure at the moment it is instantiated. And that's quite powerful if you think about that. And when you can put software outside of the application container, the moment that container is born, even if it's ephemeral, it can be secure by default. We're doing that with technologies such as Carbon Black that have been acquired, and being able to really integrate through Carbon Black workload those insights, not just for desktop applications, but server applications as well, taking advantage of a massive data lake to build out automation around that. Through our investments in SASE, we're able to provide a secure service edge environment that's within 5 milliseconds of every major public cloud data center today. So just the global points of presence that we have can provide a significant amount of reach there as well. And then if we take this even further, something that doesn't get enough attention, especially when you start talking about edge computing, is these what we could call random or rogue workloads, where lines of business are in many cases directly procuring applications through a solution provider. That may be completely out of central IT organizations' purview, but these things are happening. And historically, they've gotten ignored, but we've learned that we can't do that anymore. So we have technology that we call edge network intelligence that can do dynamic discovery of these new workloads, and then we can start to wrap automation around that. So even though this isn't managed by IT, I can do things like virtual patching as an example to further secure these, leveraging even technologies like our service-defined firewall for east-west firewalling. So there's a lot that can happen in there. And then I'm sorry, but I'm going to give you one more example. So I'm a little passionate about this if you can't tell. So beyond that, we have technology we call Tanzu Service Mesh. So sometimes service mesh can be an abused term, and people are like, well, is it really ready for prime time, right? But what we've done in this area is we've added native auto scaling capabilities. So whether that's a container workload or a traditional workload, we can auto scale applications without having to rewrite application code. More importantly, we've been able to create a global namespace for an application. So no matter where parts of that application runs, you can manage the policy for that application in the context of a single namespace, which is really powerful. So that allows IT now to attach policy, whether it's availability or security or otherwise, directly to the application, independent of the application's locale. So hope you're seeing here, there's a lot of innovation that we're driving here that's in support of both the app side and the ops side in support of these new modern applications.
Yeah, you had brought up the edge, and I want to do the double click on that. And the edge is becoming an attractive place to deliver the next generation of applications, but at the same time, you have to make it secure and have data protection. What use cases, some interesting use cases, have you seen?
Yeah, there's a lot that's been starting to pop up now. I'd say, some of the more bleeding edge use cases are around localized inferencing and doing more real-time decision making based on, sensor readouts, et cetera. And those IoT type use cases certainly get a lot of attention, but there's also more practical use cases that are happening today. If we even take this back to some of our sustainability goals, there's a new opportunity to reduce the carbon footprint at the edge. A lot of cases today, if an organization is deploying software and solutions at their edge sites, each of those solutions might land on their own piece of hardware. That increases the carbon footprint, it increases your power costs, it increases your OpEx and maintenance costs, et cetera, right? Plus complexity. It also means that if you're trying to implement change at the edge, you're having to go through some type of procurement cycle. We don't think that that's the right path going forward. We want that velocity at the edge to be defined as a software update. So if I need a new application delivery controller, it's a software update. I need a new app or data service, it's a software update. I think you get the idea here. And how does VMware differentiate? If you look at where the public cloud providers are going in terms of how they're looking to penetrate the edge, it's basically get an appliance that can run their cloud services.
Right.
What VMware is saying is, if you're an AWS shop or you're an Azure shop or Google or whoever, buy a single appliance from one of those VMware hardware partners. You put a VMware platform on there. If you want to start running Azure IoT Edge out there, or you have a business partner that does, we can support that. If you want to run AWS Greengrass and some of those services, we can support that. You have some traditional and containerized apps you're building, we can support that. And again, as you're starting to drive some of this change, it simply becomes a software update to add these new capabilities, which again, at the edge is important. And the last thing I'll mention to you is people often say, well, how am I going to modernize the edge because cost is a consideration? There's new technologies we're building in the CTO office that's going to be able to combine your network security services and your platform to run all of your modern applications and cloud services onto one piece of hardware. That's really important when you think about retail, right, or manufacturing, where my edge solution has to be cost positive. And we think we're going to hit that. And that's going to be, I think, pretty game changing for the industry.
Are some calling this a DPU or an IPU? Is that the expression for that networking at the edge, or am I thinking differently here?
Yeah, well, the data processing units, and there are more specialized devices that are coming at the edge as well. And just to back up again, what I really like so far, Patrick, you keep throwing out areas, and it's like, hey, you know what? We're doing something pretty cool there. So we also have some ways when you start looking at whether it's TPU, DPU, right? There's lots of different types of ways to do a variety of hardware acceleration, and that becomes also important at the edge. But the challenge that typically enterprises will have is the ISV is only going to typically certify maybe one type of hardware accelerator. And if you're a hardware vendor, being able to crack into that and gain access to these different applications is really challenging. So there's some new technology that we're building that's going to effectively democratize access of applications to a variety of hardware accelerators. We think that's huge for the ISV ecosystem. and equally important for the hardware providers to be able to crack in and be able to really have a chance to compete in this space. So I think that's another model where everybody gets to be successful.
So I have to drill into one area. We talked about the edge and new applications on the edge, which kind of flirts with the industrial IoT, but I think it all is dependent on what you call the edge. One thing that sometimes does get overlooked is the networking space, and you've made some investments and acquisitions in the networking space. What opportunity for innovation do you see with regards to networking that leverages the edge, or actually even the data center, that can drive more applications?
Yeah, I think there's really so much actually. So when you start to look at the area, there's a few areas that we're even I think even today just starting to talk about, which is from the edge taking advantage of localized points of presence and having intelligence to decide what part of the application needs to run where. So there is, traditional thinking says there's the cloud and the edge, but there's really that in between space or that gray area that we think is really important as well. And this is where the network plays, I think, a few key roles here. First, it's making sure that the processing of network services and network policy is as close to the application as possible. These old architectures where we were hairpinning network traffic to be scrubbed by a firewall in a data center, right? They simply don't scale. In many cases, when folks went full remote because of COVID, those architectures just completely fell down. So, first at the edge, where do we see improvement? First off is SD-WAN, and that's super critical. As I mentioned to you earlier, Patrick, I had relocated, and where I had been staying at temporarily, it actually had a 3 megabit connection, which is laughable by today's standards. But putting a VMware VeloCloud appliance box in there actually was able to get me through all of my Zoom meetings and kept me really productive without any types of hiccups. So that innovation in SD-WAN is important. And we think these boxes are going to continue to grow in terms of the types of things they can do beyond just some of your core network and security services. The ability to do more automated discovery is important, but discovery is not the secret sauce. Things get really interesting when I can take that network and security intelligence and then tie it into automation, because the security threats we face, right, are incredibly dynamic. They're constantly evolving. And that means that the technology that we're building to defend has to be more dynamic than the threats we face. That can only happen in software, right? When that security stack is fully programmatic.
Wow, it's exciting stuff. Chris, we have come to an end here, and I just want to thank you so much for kicking off day two of the 6.5 Summit. I mean, you're talking about delivering the ability to deliver next generation enterprise apps anywhere in the enterprise, in pretty much every way in the enterprise, in the most efficient and effective way possible, and secure. So I just want to appreciate your time and thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Patrick. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. So that's Chris Wolf, Vice President in the Advanced Technology Group, Office of the CTO at VMware. And this is Pat Moorhead, wishing you an awesome day two at the 6.5 Summit 2021.